morning, everyone. Welcome to the Zobrist Consulting webinar. The title of the webinar is Achieving Tangible Business Benefits with Social Computing. I am Teresa Zobrist, President of Zobrist Consulting, and I'm very pleased to welcome everyone back. We have a series of webinars that we connected with you last year on social media and social networking. So I'm very pleased to welcome everyone back today to the session today. All right, and so before further ado, let me turn over the session to Sarah Gallagher and Margarita Bruther, who are going to be the presenters today. Sarah?
Hello, my name is Sarah Gallagher, and thanks for joining us today. I'm an interactive marketing consultant, and I work with brands and have worked with brands like the North Face, Obama for America, and on things like interactive marketing campaigns and social computing. With that, I will turn it over to Margarita, who's going to lead our session today.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Margarita Bruther, and I'm a technical social computing consultant, partnering with Teresa Zobrist Consulting Group. And I work primarily with small businesses in the social computing area as well as business management consulting. So we're going to talk today about social computing and why it's valuable to you as a business owner. So we have a lot to cover today. So if you have questions, if you could just enter them on the chat there, we will have someone monitoring. Teresa will be monitoring that so that we can make sure that we get answers to all your questions, and then we'll take some time towards the end of the presentation to make sure that we've addressed all your questions. So let's get started. By now you are all very familiar with Facebook and Twitter, and if you're not using it for marketing your business, you're probably thinking about it. So what I want to talk to you today is about using the technology that those sites use to actually use it to benefit to grow and increase sales and really improve your business in a totally different way than just marketing. Let's talk a little bit about social networking and social computing. Now, as I mentioned, I know that either you're using the social networks on a personal basis, probably, or you're using it for your business for marketing now. These networks are based on communities, and communities have basically stepped up the level of communication and the quality of communication. So the communities, as I mentioned, are the basic building block of these social networks. With the social networking technologies, you can transform an audience into a community with a collaborative nature, with transparency, and an information base that they can share. This takes your business conversations that you have today to a whole new level. And the effectiveness of this communication is always a surprise to the traditional community that's used to the more traditional methods of communication. And it's basically taken for granted by the generation that has grown up with that method. If you take a look at this chart, basically, I know that the majority of you are using the internet today to communicate to either your customers or your vendors or your prospects. Even if you have an information website, you're using it to communicate to your prospects. And what we're talking about is taking that communication and really increasing its collaboration and transparency, and thereby its value, and deepening the relationship of the various members of your communities. Many businesses today are already using, as I mentioned, they're already using the internet to communicate. And they're using it as communicating to them as an interested audience in a very one-way sort of communication. Either you might be sending out emails, you might be sending out bulletins, you might have frequently asked technical support questions out on your website that you update on a regular basis. But this broadcast, if you can move this broadcast sort of communication into a virtual community that encourages these connections within the users and encourages conversations between the community members, this will have enormous value in strengthening the relationships that you have and improving its effectiveness for your business objectives. These are some statistics. This chart is a chart from McKinsey, a leading management company that basically does management work for the top Fortune 1000 companies. this is a website that they actually maintain, and you can go out there. It's actually listed on the chart there. And basically, they post all kinds of parameters that their customers have experienced in terms of business measurements, and in terms of improvements, in terms of the work that they've been doing with them. So it's a very useful site to sort of see the impact of some projects and things like that. And they keep this site updated, so I highly recommend that you take a peek at it. At any rate, these particular statistics are related to the use of social networking to their various constituencies for these companies. And these are the actual impacts of their customers. These are sort of the median type of measurements that they've gotten from their customers in projects that they did for their customers, implementing social networking and social computing with these customers. So if you look at the numbers, I mean, they're pretty impressive, right? I mean, you've got 15% reduction in operating costs by improving the quality of communication to the employee and by making that a conversation rather than just a one-way street, or sort of a one-and-a-half-way street is what typically an HR site is. They were able to improve competitive conversions by 25% by utilizing social media to do marketing, which is obviously one of the reasons that you guys are thinking about it now, or are seeing it show up all over the place. In addition to that, they've increased customer loyalty, and that is to say their customer retention by a factor of 17%. By implementing, again, methods of communication that are more community-oriented with their customers. In addition to that, they've reduced their time to market for some products and services by 20% by including their partners, their customers, and their employees in a community that prepares for the products before they're released. So you can see that these are pretty impressive results.
Margarita, these are great results. And I'm wondering if you could share some examples of how businesses are changing the productive one-way channels that they're using right now, like email or websites, into communities that are delivering these kinds of results that we're looking at on this slide.
Sure, Sarah. Well, the obvious one is if you look at the employee one, where people, pretty much everyone has some sort of method where they're communicating. They have some sort of intranet for their employees, where they might have benefit information, and the employees can sign up potentially for benefits. But if you take that and make it a community where the employees can now talk to each other and they can talk to other employees that have been around a while, you can totally reduce the time that a new employee will take to get on, because they have quick access to information. They won't have to be running around figuring out how to fill out the forms, because they can easily get that information in this community. And so basically you make that new employee more productive much quickly. In addition to that, in a technical, in terms of your technical knowledge that's required in your company, you now make, by including the experts in these communities, you now make those easily available again for the employees of your company, and making them much more productive, thereby reducing costs. The other mechanisms, of course, is that the employees are going to give you all kinds of input in that contact, and they're going to give you lots of ways to improve your business, because they're sitting there with the processes and they know what's hampering them from getting things done. And the environment encourages them to provide that type of input. In addition to that, you can do some, I've seen some more unique things done, like for example, we have an appliance company that's very trying to sort of figure out how to become more green. And it was a challenge for them. They weren't coming up with quick ways to do it. And so what they did was they created a community that included their vendors, their employees, and some of their key customers, and basically had discussions in that context. It was a closed context, so it wasn't like any customer could come along. They had to be invited, but they were able. So this sort of kept people very open, and they were able to get a lot of really good ideas and really good concerns to be able to come up with a very good green objectives and goals and a plan to get there. Another example that I've seen is a builder using where they used to have like a place where the project managers could go and get vendors, and instead they created sort of a vendor community, and the vendors were inputting the data, they were inputting things that they were involved in, so it didn't require as much maintenance. and they sort of considered it a perk, and it really beefed up the quality and the amount of vendors that they would have at any given city when they were getting ready to start a project. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about how this will work in terms of your specific company. So let's talk about some ways that you might specifically do this. Generally speaking, we're looking at, there's about 4 different types of community types. There's what's referred to as helping, which is basically a site that helps people do their jobs or lead their lives day to day. There's best practice communities, which are basically about putting together information about a specific topic and keeping it a one-stop shop of where all the best practices, guidelines, and sort of the expert of that particular topic. Knowledge stewarding is where you're organizing, and in the best practices area, it's basically people sort of going there to look at that best practice and expertise, whereas the knowledge stewarding is where you've got all the experts all together working and building this body of knowledge. And then lastly, we have the innovative site, which is about a site working together to come up with a new idea. So the appliance manufacturer that I mentioned was an example of an innovation type community. So in thinking about your business, when you think about what your customers, your vendor, what your business is, what your customers are interested in, and what you need to accomplish with your business, you sort of need to think about what type of a site would accomplish the business objectives that you're looking to complete, to get done. Hopefully by now you agree that there's value to bringing your conversations into communities. But the one thing I'm not going to tell you is that it's easy. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of diligence in terms of managing the site and making sure that the right types of activities are occurring in them, and that the right type of security is there, and that it's being monitored and is continuously a positive community. And with all this work, you don't want to be spending a lot of time with the technology around it. So you want to find yourself an infrastructure that you can focus on the actual nurturing of these communities rather than just the technical maintenance of them. So these are the things that you need to really make sure that your infrastructure has. It's something that's very confidential, obviously, and where you want people to be very open and to feel secure. You've got to make sure that the security and the is maintained, and that everyone is very confident that they're in a safe environment. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that can accomplish this for you.